Good evening. This is the 4-minute warning. We'll start promptly at 7:05. So if anyone needs a quick bathroom break or a sip of water, now would be the time to do that. And we will be getting started with the My Life with Elvis reading. This is what you're all here for, right? The My Life with Elvis. Okay, just wanted to be sure. And hello to the online folks, and we'll do a formal welcome in just a minute. Thank you. Good evening, and welcome to Poetry for the People, a reading and conversation with writer, teacher, creative thinker, and all-around awesome human being, Michael Kleber-Diggs. Get some I am Hawona Sullivan Jansen, the outgoing co-chair of Literary Witnesses, and we welcome you here. Welcome to Plymouth Congregational Church, a home for progressive Christian theology in the Twin Cities for more than 160 years. Woo, that's a long time. Here at Plymouth, we aggressively seek to live an art-rich life at the beautiful intersection of good deeds, faith, and action. Plymouth recognizes and supports the arts as a vital part of the human spiritual journey. The church maintains an art gallery, a theater, a very famous music series that is having auditions right down the hall tonight, and now, for 25 years this year, a reading series in the form of literary witnesses. Normally, the next words you would hear is that Literary Witnesses events may be free to you, but they are not free to us. And I would ask you to stick around at the end to notice the ushers and to place an offering in the basket. But that's not happening tonight. Thanks to our sponsor committee, the Arts Forum here at the church, there will be no request for offerings tonight. That doesn't mean you can't go online to the church's website and sign up to get messages about our events in the future, and also to make a donation on your own if you'd like. But there will be no baskets and no pressure, and there are still cookies after the event. I ask that you take a few minutes to find your phones and either silence them or turn them off completely. And I want to introduce you to someone here in the audience who, like me, is exiting after tonight's program and has been serving on the committee for a very long time. Joan, would you come up for just a minute, please? So I have been involved with Literary Witnesses for about 7 years, and for 6 of those years, I have been the chair or the co-chair. Joan has been involved with Literary Witnesses for how many years, Joan? 16 years. She has served as a volunteer, and then since my tenure, she stepped up to become the volunteer coordinator. And so the reason that you find chairs organized, volunteers able to help you for the last 6 years has been because of Joan. And we are really going to miss her when she steps away from this role. And I just wanted to remind you that these things are not magic, that there are wonderful people behind them that make them happen. Thank you, Joan. And now I want to introduce to you my current co-chair and the upcoming new chair for Literary Witnesses, Carrie Bassett. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and I'm glad to see so many of you here. It's really great. It's really great. And this should be a fun evening with 2 readers and then some conversation and some questions. I'm Carrie Bassett. I've been involved with Literary Witnesses for maybe 10 years. I don't know, you know how the years just go by and kind of meld together with some things. So that's what's happened with me. I also am a poet, but not nearly as well known as these 2. As Hawona was saying, there's no free will offering tonight. Actually, this is our free will offering to you. We have been in hiatus for quite a while, and so this is our offering to you, which doesn't mean you can't come in the future and maybe take something out of your pocket and put it in the basket. And let me tell you about 2 things that are coming up. One is very soon, May 2nd, next week, I guess, Celeste Kennel-Shank. I don't know her at all, but Shared Spaces, Shared Leadership, a conversation on how we live out our social justice commitments in our congregation and building relationships, touching on topics of gender equity, racial justice, and neighborhood. There will be information on the website. And then, as part of Literary Witnesses, our state poet laureate, Hyde Erdrich, will be here in the fall. We don't know the date yet. She has a new chapbook that'll just be coming out, and she wants to time her reading here with the emergence of that chapbook. So that should be really great. Okay, let's see. I guess, yeah, okay. Yeah, there have been co-chairs. Now Hawana's retiring, so I'm the co-chair, but without the co. And so, so I invite any of you who might be interested in serving on the committee to talk to her or me afterwards. It's really fun because you get to talk to poets. We meet infrequently, and then there are events like this. So it's pretty good. It's a pretty good thing. Okay, now I will introduce Hawona. She's going to read a poem first. Then Michael will read some poems. And then the three of us are going to hop up there, or somehow get up there, gracefully ascend. And we will be having some questions and stuff, but the three of us will be talking, or Michael will be talking about one thing first, and then the three of us will be talking about a big question, which you can be thinking about now because we want there to be conversation, and that is something like the role of poetry in our world today. What's poetry for now? What good does it do? Do we need it? So we want some conversation, and then, of course, questions, and then cookies and coffee and tea over there. Okay. So Hawona, you're up. Hawona she lives in St. Paul. Somehow she comes over here. Some of us do, I don't, okay. She's a graduate, just a recent graduate, 2002-03, of the University of Minnesota's MFA program in interdisciplinary art and social practices. Has been a chair, as she said, a chair and co-chair here of Literary Witnesses for quite a long time. Has received all kinds of awards from the Jerome Foundation, McKnight Foundation, Minnesota State Arts Board, and I think she said to me the other day, I don't know if you said you're a poet or a writer, you said, I'm a playwright now. So she's going to read us a poem. Oh, and she's writing something, this sounds great, the imagined story of the courtship and marriage of her Caribbean great-great-grandmother and her Irish great-great-great-grandfather in the mid-1800s. Doesn't that sound like fun? So we'll hear from her on that probably later, but now you're up.
Okay, so I must admit it's a little bit awkward transitioning from chair to reader. So I'm just going to ask you to all do an inhale and exhale with me for just a moment, if you wouldn't mind. 1, 2, 3, in. 1, 2, 3, out. Thank you. One of the defining moments in my career as a writer was an artist in residency that I received at the now defunct Soap Factory Gallery along the Mississippi River. While in residence there, there were 11 other artists in that program, and I was the sole individual who was not a visual artist. And so I had lots of time on my hand. I had a strange spiritual encounter with people who had apparently worked or lived in that community by the river before. And I wrote a jazz opera that I performed as part of the residency called Clean. And so I'm going to read several of the short poems from that piece, and then I'm going to give way for Michael's time, because I really want you to have some good time with Michael. Clean. Clean, clean, clean. I was born beneath a soap factory. I sprang fully formed from deep inside a pile of bones and tallow. I smelled so clean, so fresh, so doggone new that no one could tell I had an unclean past. Clean. They that are born can also be reborn. They that are dirty can also become clean. 1, wash your dirty face and hands. 2, then I think you'll understand clean. 2 sponges are definitely better than 1. 4, clean, you can't take it with you. Clean, 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 clean. Get that dirty monkey off your back. Clean is as clean does. It is what makes the past was. If you are lost and you cannot get found, perhaps clean, 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 clean is what you are looking for. Come on, beautiful people, let's get cleaned. Come on, beautiful people, we have got to get clean. If you've been having a tough time, soap can help you to cope. Come on, beautiful people, let's get clean. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good, feel clean. Now, I hope, as Hawona said, we have a good time. Well, that's what she threatened. We have a good time with Michael Kleber-Diggs, reading from his book, Worldly Things. There's some for sale back there. Well, he's pretty good. He's pretty good. He has won the Max Ritvo Poetry Prize, a Hefner Heights, Kansas Book Award, Balconies Poetry Award, Poetry Center Book Award, was selected as a finalist for the 2022 Minnesota Book Award, and now he is working on a book on lap swimming called My Weight in Water that's forthcoming. Do you know when? Next year? Next June. Okay, so we'll hear about swimming from him, but in the meantime, go ahead.
If I say hi, will you say hi back? Hi. Before I read, I just want to say there's a lot of cool things about being a poet. A lot of cool things. There's something really great about making something and then sharing it with people. And that sharing happens in a lot of ways. And one of the ways the sharing happens is that people make space. And they say, hey, we're going to have a poetry reading. And they broadcast that news and they remind people to come. They also have, I assume, meetings where they consider who might come visit. And we call them curators. And it is hard work. You got to pick the poet. You got to reach out to the poet. You got to probably reach out to him again. Then you got to set a plan. Then you probably got to check in with them on the plan, remind them to answer again. And it's a lot of work, and it's important work. And every time I read in a space like this, I find myself grateful that people make it possible for me to share things I'm working on and thinking about. So thank you, Hawona. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Joan. Thank you to the church for valuing arts. And thank you all for coming tonight. Okay. I'm just going to read some old things and some new things. Old things means in this book. New things means in what may someday be a book. And I'll start with a poem called After You Left. After you left, the weight of your absence became a black hole revolving around my memory of you, itself a black hole. Wavelets wrinkled the sheer sheet of space and time. Father, the loss of you is a planet orbiting what might have been. I cannot say if the emptiness is a grand celestial body or a vacuum so complete nothing can escape. I know these forces have mass and motion that bends, calls in, ripples fabric, distorts the pace of light for 1 billion years. Yes. A little bit slower. Savor the words. Thank you. I have read here once before, and it was on a night when, like, one of my favorite poets was here, Sean Hill. And I had the high honor of taking a poetry workshop with Sean, and he had us write poems on postcards. Part of the exercise was like, can you write a short poem? And I just got so much out of my time with Sean, I wrote a poem called Postcard to Sean, to him. I like to joke that, I mean, it could fit on a postcard if I wrote really small. But this is Postcard to Sean for Sean Hill. Postcard to Sean, or fraternity, or chance. For example, I might write, I thought of you the other day on the trail through woods, due south of the Minnesota River, just west of the Capitol. So quiet there, I heard critters scurry along the path, and leaves and twigs rustle and snap. My own feet falling while I puzzled my way through some particular poem part, wanting to know more about prayer. A specific Catholic prayer I used to recite. Sean, a bird tweeted or trilled a morning song, quite short, quite grand. It got me wondering what creature calls with notes above the rattle, which led me back to you, who might know, or research until you did. You, out west in Fairbanks, north of me yet, still sleeping, or up with your baby boy, as once I was up with my baby girl. Or I might write to fatherhood instead, or happenstance. Because postcards to people are postcards to ideas, to ideals, to abstractions. They're psalms, quite short. Anyway, I wanted to reach out to you in these other things to say, brother. I looked it up. I'm pretty sure it was an indigo bunting. I am a person who has, over the course of my life, struggled to maintain what you would call traditional religious faith. So I'm spiritual, not religious, I think is the typical saying. When I'm in churches, I often like to read a poem that is, for me, kind of a prayer to ecumenicism. I want to promote the idea that if religion offers for people, or spirituality, or time in nature, or time with art, a calling to something divine, not only is that awesome, but maybe that also could be unifying. It's hard not to think at a time where religion is also at least connected in some ways to tremendous suffering right now, that there might be a value in leaning toward that call to the divine. What name for this? Do you hold salt or beads? Wood or wool? Someone else's hand or your own? Do you kneel? Lift one hand high above your head, or do you shine the light of your palms up toward sky? Do you raise your chin? Close your eyes? Is light returned to you? Do you sit on the floor, shoeless, chant? Do you fold your body gently onto itself, shins to earth, seat to feet, chest to knees? Are you among brothers or sisters? Are you alone sometimes? Do you call it morning light or dawn prayer? Is it the flower offering, or do you ask for daily bread? What do you say at dusk, at night? And what do you seek in supplication? What do you offer? Water or fruit? Flowers or incense? Do you give your servant self? To what, may I ask? To what? I rest my sit bones on wood and wool, on leather. My feet touch carpet, pine, metal. I make circles and lines. Sometimes everything reduces to circles and lines. I call this providence. I know that isn't the right word. I find this at home in my kitchen or at my desk. Sometimes this finds me when I'm on a bicycle surrounded by cars or trees, shoulders low and curved, back arched, my chest deflated and down, and me at work to keep everything round. Sometimes there I hear birds or squirrels chant above me. Other times I am summoned to spaces magnified in community. What name for this? I feel called. I walk forward to say, this is what I have to offer. One part of my small story. Or this is what I have witnessed. I want you to notice it too. My hands, my grasp. Sometimes they only claim air. Sweet siblings, we're here together either way. What name must we give to the this beyond our words? I'm good? Okay. Super excited about spring. Show of hands, although winter, I'm not saying I want more now, but I don't know. We pay a king's ransom for shoveling, and then he came by like twice. I have a series of 3 poems called Tiny Parent. Just me kind of imagining parenting and thinking about parenting. And this is the second poem from that series called Tiny Parent version 2. Imagine you are a little bird, activated by instinct. Wait, chip, chirp, emerge, unfold, cry out for air, for food. All of it natural, like the quench of rain and dew. All of it, the process by which you pull a pre-chewed worm into your tiny gut. The hair of your nestling life within the brood. How familiar that is. How easy it is to dwell within your mud and twigs, twine and gum, feathers, leaves. Those larger birds who feed you belong to you, and you to them. You may rely on them for everything. Then fewer things, fewer, little, launch, release and fall, labor toward flight, all instinct. Imagine now some little birds are yours. Some of what you know of care you will know by heart. This is how to clean your hatchlings. This is a sound for hunger. This is a cry of thirst. The circling shadows present a problem requiring your response. Your every instinct won't be enough. Some of what you know, you will know from when you were a chick. Your only flight plan may be flawed. My own father was mostly talons and beaks, feathers ruffled, something usually bulging his gullet. I had to choose, replicate or replace. Maybe you'll have to choose too. Replicate or replace. Replicate or replace. Parent as you were parented, or create something new. When you reach that decision point, you may find yourself in midair with nothing to grasp but memories and desire. You may feel yourself suspended between the bird you were and the bird you hope to be. In that moment, I wish I could advise you, keep every beautiful thing, shed everything mean. But I've learned that isn't how it works. The truth is, you are still the little bird you were, unfolding into understanding you will live on in some future home. Your hollow bones, the spine of walls, your feathers, insulation, your dust with dew as mud for mortar. When Worldly Things came out, I started getting invitations to nature things. Like, will you come to this nature poetry reading? I'm like, what is that about? I didn't think of myself as a nature writer. Reflecting back on the book, there are trees all over the place. But here's a shy confession. I rarely know what they're called. I definitely know a paper birch when I see one. A pine tree, although if you're asking me, is it a Douglas fir or a northern pine, or no clue. I cannot tell the difference between an oak tree and an elm tree in the summer. I should say an elm and an ash. I could know an oak tree a mature oak tree when I see one. Here's the thing, I love trees. I don't know what they're called. And this is a poem called It's a Pagoda Dogwood. The title has quotation marks around it, so it's a bit of dialogue. I think you'll know who the speaker is in the poem. It's a pagoda dogwood. In our backyard, there lives a short, broad tree, unfurling each April into vibrant green, then blooming and blazing, rich red in summer, pink and orange, then rust to light brown every single fall. Often in winter, fat snowflakes arrive so slowly and land so gently they coat each limb like down. Perhaps I'm too content to love our tree as just our tree to commit to remembering. Perhaps I'm drawn to other things or so adrift I tend to forget because once a year or so, it seems, I ask, what's that tree called again? The one in our backyard. Always her answer comes, always soft like raindrops rolling off the leaves of trees in the wake of an autumn storm. But still, loving our tree for so many days, for so many years, one would think I could commit its kind to memory. And someday I will. But right now, every morning when the sun comes up, I go visit. I can tell its brown buds are enlarged a bit more. Soon they will open. Then some wrens and cardinals will call. I would like to say in my defense, having written a poem with the name of the tree in the title, I think I am likely to remember what it's called, or remember where I can look it up. I'm going to try 3 more. This is a short one called The Poet. It's an Ars Poetica. It's also acrostic, but you can't see it. Someday maybe. And it just spells my name, Michael. So the first letter of each line is my name. The Poet. This is a true story, by the way. My mom stopped at our sliding glass door and stared at me initially, then at the grass in which I sat. Her toddler, quite calm, watching, she thought at first, some fascinating thing holding my total attention. She always says in time she decided almost nothing else was there, just that patch of grass. Years elapsed. Years. That's how long it took me to really see them. Little lace wings. Right there. Agitating their lush forest. Enchanted. Up a little. This one. Okay. I wrote this on Tuesday. I don't know. New stuff. Ode to a buttercream yellow house on East 8th Street in Wichita, Kansas, which was home to grace and art, and theirs and theirs. Tiny house, tiny rooms, still somehow massive enough to hold generations all at the same time. Ask the house, and the house will tell you of the many celebrations it held. Not all of them bittersweet. Some seemed quite pure, I'm pretty sure. Although I was young. I was perhaps too young to know what I know now. Nostalgia as a form of romance. Romance as a kind of distortion. Some things end up hidden, omitted. I was young. My eyes stayed usually drawn to the way the hazy sun came in through windows above her kitchen sink. My ears mostly tuned to the realistic radio, perpetual in the counter's corner, and almost always on. And things were shielded from me too, I'm sure. I'm sure of it. But now I'm drifting. This is supposed to be about the house. We always entered through the side door, right into her kitchen, and often she was there, cooking, cleaning, hot combing hair, everybody slick with grease or sweat, or grease and sweat. In other words, work and risk were present right there with her arthritic hands, our tender scalps, the iron comb fine and hot enough to burn, and here's what saw us through: her exceptional care. I'm drifting again. The yard, impeccable. The abundant garden in the back by the weather-worn shed. The tiny dining and living rooms. The 2 small bedrooms sandwiching the single bath that was also quite small, but was indoors. The solid door that barely missed the bowl. The heavy tub and floating sink. Tonics and razors in the cabinet. And the tiny slit where spent blades settled and are settling still. Of this, I am certain. The level porch he added off the back. The basement he finished partially. A bedroom added when their 5th child arrived. Him sleeping not far from all the goods she canned and preserved and made good use of, made good meals of. Their children, well, all except for the one they lost. And their children's children, returning home for suppers every major holiday, that little house, leading them to larger houses far away, but also somehow always back there. We are still back there, all of us. So this is an ode to what that little house allowed, held, all of us. Ideas, dreams, creations, goodwill and error, forgiveness, and concrete things like bridges, strings of code, photos and poems, students, and all manners of passengers. Oh, there I go. There I go again, drifting. And I'll close with the Grove because I got to read with Hawona at the soap factory and hear the extended dance remix version of Clean, which is super dope. Yeah, it's also just where my head's at. Like, I wrote this poem while hiking in North Strand Big Woods. We went to the Hidden Falls on our first full day there, and I kept seeing all these strange trees. Like trees that were growing around each other. Also, it was mushroom season, so there were a lot of people hunting mushrooms, but I want you to know I did not eat any mushrooms, and this is not resulting from a hallucinatory investigation or anything like that. But I kept seeing these strange trees, and then I thought, ooh, because there was a contest, I forgot that part, to put poems on posters, what are they called? Broadsides on train cars and city buses, and I'm like, wow, I really want to have a broadside on a train car or city bus. And the date was coming up, and I needed to write poems while we were camping and then hoping for an idea, and then I had this idea, what if trees were riding the train? Again, no mushrooms. Anyway, I ended up writing about what I always write about. And this is called The Grove, and this will be my last poem, and I'm excited for the conversation to come, and I'm grateful to be here. Thank you so much for having me. The Grove. Planted here as we are. See how we want to bow and sway with the motion of earth and sky. Feel how desire vibrates within us as our branches fan out. Promise entanglements, rarely touch. Hear our sweet rustlings. If only we could know how twisted up our roots are, we might make vast shelter together. Cooler places, verdant spaces, more sustaining air. But we are strange trees, reluctant in this forest. We oak and ash, we pine, the same, not different. All of us reach toward star and cloud. All of us want our share of light. Just enough rainfall. Thank you so much. in the poem when I was talking about oak and ash and pine. I wasn't sure those were the trees. I just put that in there.
Okay. This working now? Okay.
Okay.
Oh, Michael, one thing I forgot to say when I introduced you is that you teach poetry at a prison, right? A prison?
Yeah.
Okay, which one?
So I teach poetry through the Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop.
Okay.
And this is a program that has and maintains relationships with all the adult correctional facilities in Minnesota. So I've been able to teach at Moose Lake, Faribault, Stillwater, Oak Park Heights, Shakopee, Rush City. I feel like I'm missing one, but at all of the adult correctional facilities in Minnesota.
Okay, including the ones mentioned in the paper today, the
Yeah.
sex offender ones?
Yes, Lino
Okay.
Lakes.
Okay,
Yep.
okay,
Yep.
okay. Well, that was kind of
Yeah.
difficult to read about. So I'm wondering what you've learned, not what you've taught them, but
Yeah.
what you've learned from working with these prisoners.
So I want to start by saying I think some of what I learned is just the deepening of an understanding that I imagined that I had.
Oh, okay.
And within that, I think one of the largest ways my thinking was expanded. I mean, I really understood that in spite of a life that included some adversity, the loss of my father when I was young, I've also really led a lucky life in a lot of ways. I had a lot of people who were invested in my growth and development, who encouraged me and supported me and kept me on the right path. Sometimes I didn't always agree with the methods, but I have a lot of people who supported me.
Okay,
And
yeah.
wanted, and then in that setting, I really came to understand how that is not always the case. And we say often there, but for the grace of God, go I. And I understood that. I've had good luck.
Okay.
And I really understood it working with people in correctional facilities. And I'll add one other thing.
Okay.
For me, as a writer, I think I'd spent a lot of time writing about everything except the death of my father. We sometimes in poetry talk about difficult rooms. In writing, we talk about difficult rooms to enter and stay in and work in and write in. And that was definitely my difficult room. And in teaching classes at correctional facilities, I found myself in the presence of writers who were often entering, dwelling in, confronting, and writing about their most difficult rooms. And I was inspired by that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I just didn't know how you'd answer that question, and I just.
Did I do okay?
You did. Don't you think he did? Don't you think he did?
Okay.
Oh, she says only so-so.
Yeah, C plus. I'll take a
It
C
was
plus.
amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, and now I want to ask us, we can talk about, and then I'd like you to talk about, this is a big question, and then we can have some questions from you on any topic, but this is like, what's the role of poetry in our world today? This is a big abstract question, but I think we can get some real, oh, okay.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Because he may want to use it, that's why.
Oh, okay, okay.
I was going to reach out because it's my fault, because he was leaving it, and I said, you sure you don't want to bring it up with you? And he's like, oh, maybe I do.
All right, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm
you
just
want us-
wondering what you think about the role of poetry in our world today. Does it do anything? Why do we need to have it? No,
I mean,
it doesn't
not
do anything. I mean, we can
particularly,
get
but-
together and have fun like this, but anything else?
You know, I think one of the reasons why I took on Literary Witnesses is because I believe that poetry saved my life. Following the death of my son, so I have my own rooms, I couldn't function at all. And it was my mother putting a pad of paper and a pencil in my hand and telling me to write it down that started my path on becoming a writer. And I am surprised how many amazing novelists began their journey as poets.
Yeah.
Because what poetry tells you is you don't need to be able to create a Merriam-Webster unabridged dictionary of a story in order to impact the world around you and to change other people's lives as well.
Right. I mean, I think I learned a lot about this after the murder of George Floyd.
Okay.
I was at home writing and posting things sometimes to social media, just ideas that I had, feelings that I was wrestling with, and things like that. And initially feeling just like it wasn't very much at all. Over time, what I came to understand is that writing, that art, that poetry can save the world and change the world in conjunction with marching, rioting sometimes, putting graffiti on buildings, lobbying legislatures, writing policy, building overnight supply chains, building places for people to sleep when they don't have housing, building makeshift hospitals, singing songs, dancing in the street. It's all of it. I have a thing that I'm working on right now where I'm talking about how I sometimes hope someone will throw a brick and change the world, but not hurt anybody or anything. And here's the thing. I know about myself. I am not the brick thrower. So what it ends up being for me is the particular gift that each person has coming forward to make a difference. I happen to love poetry. I have friends who happen to love policy. And I have friends who happen to love community building. And I think that it's all of our gifts, our specific gifts to me, coming together that change the world. Poetry is a part of it, for sure.
Okay. And what I notice is that when there's a time of deep trouble, you two have mentioned it, but I think when someone has died, there's a funeral or something, and people reach for poetry then. They want that essence, that drop of nectar that somehow, what does that drop of nectar do? It just kind of fills you in a different way that you need to be filled at that time, that usually, doesn't happen with your ordinary cup of coffee, but it somehow it fills the soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the one cool thing about most poems is you can carry them in your pocket. Like they fit in a pretty concise space, and you can return to it over and over.
That's right, yeah. And the words are evocative, so sometimes, just the sweetness of the sound can makes rhythm in yourself.
Yeah.
And that's helpful too, I think.
Yeah.
Now, I wonder if any of you have thoughts about the role of poetry in our world today. You want to add to this conversation? Yes, okay. Oh, we were supposed to have a portable mic here.
Well, but the
wait, there's
audience
one here.
online won't be able to hear you if you don't use it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good, here it is, okay.
Thank you.
Pardon me, I breathe kind of heavy, so if you hear her breathing heavy, it's me.
Okay.
Good evening for all of you online. I didn't realize you were here, but thank you for being here. My name is Jane, and I've never taken up the oxygen of the room like this. I'm not often a poetry reader, but I've been a poet since I was a little girl. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to share a story with you. Teach a child poetry. That is where the catalyst and the chemistry of the brain occurs. You teach a child poetry, they're better socially, they're better intellectually. They can cope with skills they didn't realize they had. I was raised with, well, Ralph and Walt and all the amazing people by my great-grandmother, who was the oldest woman who graduated from college in Minnesota when she was 83. But I want you to know there was a cost. Her 2 sons left, she never saw them again, and her daughters did not respect her. So I want you to understand that we're not living in those days anymore. There is no reason why you cannot. I taught my granddaughter, who's 21, she was published when she was 10. My 9-year-old, when she was 7, she had to speak in front of her entire school from kindergarten to 6th grade. Her poem won the whole school. And I was not with her. They live in Texas.
Okay.
But it's the way you treat them and the way you guide them and you show them. I read poetry to them. I never wrote a poem down until my husband died 19 years ago. And I inherited 35 sketchbooks from him. And in those sketchbooks, I found out he was a poet. And the whole time that we 32-year lovely life together, I would say them out loud in passing in my life. And he'd go, how come you aren't writing that down? Because it was a part of the internal mechanism because I was raised that way.
Yeah.
I like one that I do remember and wish I had kept was, the reason a frog croaks is to hear himself sing. Just a silly little dapper thing that you splash out there, ditty or bitty or whatever. And that helps our life be risen, and there's more joy, and there's more chemistry between each of us. Because understand, there's this wall between every one of us. And when we breach that, when we open up and let your words in, that's a connection. You may not understand that as a physical connection, but it's a connection. I'm on fire right now just from having the courage to talk. So thank you for this
thank
time.
you. Yeah.
And thank you for the air. I appreciate it.
Okay. Did you want to say something? Okay.
I want to say that I was in the 3rd grade, and my 3rd grade teacher was an amazing woman named Mrs. Choice. That was actually Choice, just like Sophie's Choice, yeah. And I was hemming and hawing about the homework assignment, which was to write a poem about your favorite part of yourself. And I had just gotten eyeglasses, and I wanted to write a poem about my eyes, but I was afraid someone was going to make fun because I'd just gotten glasses. And she said to me, Miss Sullivan, the poem can be funny, the poem can be serious, the poem can tell the hecklers to sit down and shut up. And so that has stayed with me all of these years, and I've never managed to get the sit down and shut up poem, but I'm pretty good with the right. I'm pretty good with the funny poems. And then I had my mother, who was raised a Southern Baptist and continues to be one to this day, tell me that the poem is the oldest form of human praise of life outside of your own body. And I found that to be very interesting, right? Because we inhabit these shells for X period of time, and one of the few remnants that we leave behind that is the words that we choose to write down. So, I mean, I think I wrote an opera, did I mention that? But I also want to point out that, like, poems are put to music. I don't know anyone who's putting operas to like
Operas
novels.
usually put to music.
Yes, well, novels to music
right.
at this stage. You can teach children poems when they're small, and they will stay with them for the rest of their life. No matter how many times I read Animal Farm, I cannot remember it in its entirety. So there is something about the succinct nature of poetry that I think makes it much more accessible to us. And we're sort of like newspaper reporters. We can get our stuff out there a lot faster than the novelist can.
That's right.
I followed you on social media during the time that everything was changing here in the Twin Cities after the murder of George Floyd. George Floyd died on my daughter's birthday, and she was, 19,
Yeah.
18. It was a very complicated ride, and I remember Janata Petrus's poem, "Could we please give the police departments to the grandmothers?" And I didn't even need to hear the rest of the poem, just that as the title made me feel like I was in a better place already than I had been before, because we were trying to figure out some solutions even in those early days. So that's what you get from poetry, right?
Joan, did you want to say something? Oh, okay. Okay. Someone else? Yeah, okay, let's see. Karen.
Don't you think that poetry can say the things that mostly are left unsaid in the world? And the things that are not said, even in this time, can be said in poetry. I've read it.
Well, I would agree, and
I
a
think-
lot of your poems show
Yes.
that. You can.
He's got that idea. He starts talking about trees and not knowing the names, but he names the deep things that we maybe want to forget or we have forgotten. And I've noticed that in several of your poems. So keep on.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you. That's very kind. And poetry in general, yes, Karen, I agree. Hawona, as you were sharing a moment ago about how poems are portable in another way, like you can remember them. A lot of that is connected to the patterns poets make with sound, like rhyme, and also with meter, and the way that we lean into those things. I think it's so connected to the rhythms of our bodies and our speech that they're easy to kind of carry in that way. And I do think poems can give voice to things that are not said. And I also hope that poetry can encourage or inspire readers also to voice things that have been on their hearts or in their minds that they were having a hard time finding language for. So maybe there's also some possibilities there.
Well, we know what Emily Dickinson says, tell all the truth, but tell it slant. So it doesn't knock you over the head, it just comes and gets at you. I think we have one more comment over there, and then we'll move on to the coffee and cookies and more conversation, whoever wants to talk. Yeah, go ahead. Tell us your name.
My name is Allison Berglund Johnson, and I wanted to ask Michael and Hawona if you both would be willing to talk a little bit about how your practice as poets is informed by your extensive professional practice and other things.
Oh, snap.
I know. So I moved to the Twin Cities in 1990 to go to law school at the University of Minnesota. And then this is the part where I would say I graduated and passed the bar and practiced law for a while. It didn't work out, and so you became a poet? I just want to get in front of that. And then over the years, I started to realize that I really want to write. And the signs were all over the place. Like Hawona, I started young. I was writing all the time. I was writing poems and short stories while I was going to law school.
Okay.
And when I was done with law school, I taught legal writing, like just writing. And then over time, I think a lot because as a father, I was talking to my daughter all the time and telling her, hey, it's a short ride. Do what you want. Do what you want. And she was really interested in dance, and that's what she studied in college and what she's doing now. And at a certain point, I realized I keep telling her to do what she wants, and ask myself if I'm doing that. And then began what was a pretty long transition to try to move away from working in corporate settings toward working as an artist and hoping to manage that transition without creating chaos at home. Here's what I want to say. The law, the skills and things that I learned in law school, the frame for thinking, for organizing, writing, my goodness, for precision. I feel like half of my job is syntax. Am I saying the thing I think I'm saying? You hone that. You hone all of that in law school. Incidentally, it could be philosophy or a lot of different degree programs. But for me, I really didn't realize it. Wouldn't take nothing from my journey now, but at law school, I, among other things, really received exceptional training to be a poet.
Does that mean I have to go to law school?
It couldn't hurt. Hawona, what about you?
What was the question? What was my
Professional, how you professional?
how my other
Yeah.
thingamabobbies impacted my abilities to do the doomahickeys?
Okay.
Well, so I did not come here to go to law school. I came here to go to undergraduate school at the University of Minnesota and graduated with a degree in American history, specializing in the era from between World War I and World War II. My thesis work was specifically on the experiences of mixed race couples and their mixed race children and how they navigated race and identity. And so I was pretty sure I was going to graduate school and I was going to be a historian for the rest of my life. And I got derailed by taking an art class that I needed to take in order to finish my bachelor's degree. I drew a self-portrait on a piece of paper, and an extraordinary woman named Joyce Lyon told me it was beautiful. And I thought, oh, snap!
Yeah.
Now what do I do, right? Well, to make a long story short, my parents were like, we ain't footing the bill for no artist. So I became a historian and then went on to do my training and became a compromise job, which was a curator. And I was a visual arts curator at the University of Minnesota for 11 years. Setu Jones's work came into the picture, and when he was doing Create, community meal, which was where he blocked off a city mile and hosted this amazing community meal, and I signed up to be a volunteer for that. And afterwards I was like a puppy dog, and I kept saying to him, how do I do what you're doing? And he looked at me and said, you're already doing it. Do you not realize that you're already doing it? And so that was the permission that I needed to stop not doing things or doing them sneakily and to just sort of kind of do them. And so I've been a writer because I grew up in a family where my grandfather was an extraordinary storyteller. So I've been a writer since I was a little kid, ripping off his stories and changing the names of the characters to my friends and telling them at school. And then I went to the Minnesota Northwoods Writers Conference one year when Joy Harjo was the visiting artist. And she plays musical instruments, and she sings, and she writes these beautiful lyrical pieces. And I asked her, how do you do it all? And she said, you just do. So I came back from the conference. I joined a jazz ensemble where, the poems become that. I create public art installations, like 100 lawn signs in my neighborhood where I ask my community to help me write a poem. And so they sort of inhabit the space between the visual world and the text world. I write plays, one-woman shows, I perform them. And I do it because Say To and Joy both said you either already are or you're doing it. And so when I teach a writing class, one of the first things that I say to the students in that class is that you already write something every day. Whether it's an email, a grocery list, a performance appraisal, a note to remember to feed the dog. So how do you take what you already write and make it into poetry, I think is the question. And then once that is the question, it completely changes the whole situation because you discover how much poetry you've already written that's just waiting to be mined and shared.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, thank you. And I know I have lived in a left brain world for a very long time and performed and lived and worked there, and now I'm just moving right in that sense, but not politically. So I'm just writing live.
Support the arts.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. This has been great. Please have some coffee and cookies over there and talk with each other, and we'll see you again another time.
And Michael
Yeah,
will
okay.
be doing book sales at the
Yeah.
back table. And will you sign them?
For sure.
If people
Okay.
buy them?
Yeah.
And so I have my favorite line from a Michael Kleber-Diggs poem, and I just want to read it because it's only 5 words long and it shows you why poetry is so extraordinary. It's from your poem that's called I Love My Neighbors as I Love Myself. The line is, love is history plus desire. And it's one of my favorite lines of all time. So thank you for coming and giving us a chance to put our history and desire onto you and your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, both of you.